Welcome back. So we talked about how tsunamis are triggered, how they're caused, how they're created. Where should we worry about these things? So that's what we're going to talk about, the risk zones for tsunamis. Alluding to maybe what we've already talked about, how they occur, some of the triggers. What areas on Earth are at risk for tsunamis? What do you think? Yeah, I think I like that answer. So here's a little map to show you. Red indicates the greatest hazard. So looking around Alaska, parts of Canada and the United States, on down the whole west coast of Mexico and South America, a lot in the Japan, northern Russia, getting down into the islands of the Pacific, into Indonesia, even a little bit in the Mediterranean. So those are going to be your highest hazards, the greatest risk. So the tsunami return period, less than 500 years. So on average, historically, one tsunami occurs, major tsunami in these areas, once less every 500 years. So they are somewhat of a rare event, but they can happen every year around the world, but maybe just in different locations. So the greatest hazard, that's typically areas located near very active convergent boundary subduction zones, which could cause a mega thrust earthquake capable of producing a magnitude 9 or greater earthquake. So the areas you see in red kind of sit in areas that have that potential. Yellow are near those areas that have that kind of potential. Maybe they're on a convergent boundary as well, but just maybe not as active of one. And green doesn't mean no hazard; it just means low hazard. So even if you look at the east coast of the United States, the Atlantic coast, it has a low hazard. So we can get tsunamis in these areas. It's just on average, one every more than 2,000 years. And the areas where we don't have any colors, that's either really no hazard or just no data to really fill in that gap. So again, noting where the red is the greatest hazards, kind of in these areas, even a little bit in the Mediterranean. Let's take that to this map: convergent boundary, convergent boundary, convergent boundary. Again, convergent boundaries that capable of producing mega thrust earthquakes 9.0 or above. These are probably your highest hazards. Not that other places can't, or other triggers don't cause tsunamis, but most likely that's what you're going to see. So again, just another map kind of looking at the same thing. As far as the U.S. is concerned, the West Coast, Pacific Coast, is going to be at a higher risk than the East Coast. Not that the East Coast has none, it's just low, relatively low. But again, a lot around the Pacific, again, even around the Mediterranean. But in these areas, they're not necessarily always all convergent boundaries. So, for instance, again, the low risk of tsunami on the east coast of the U.S., well, there's no boundary there. There's no boundary there at all. So what could cause a tsunami over here? Don't forget, there's also volcanoes. Right? In fact, one of the last historic tsunamis to reach the U.S., which hundreds or thousands of years ago, was triggered by a volcanic collapse here in the northern Atlantic Ocean. So the red triangles indicate volcanoes. I forget which one specifically, but a volcanic collapse caused a tsunami that did reach the East Coast. So again, it's not just earthquakes. Those are the most common. That is the most common trigger. And it can be these other things, but convergent boundaries, earthquakes, volcanoes, tsunamis. Let's throw that in there. Fun stuff. A mega thrust earthquake at a subduction zone, at a convergent boundary, to walk you through it. So you have some sort of subducting plate, typically oceanic crust, subducting down, which is more dense, so it gets pushed under. The less dense continental crust is above, and it kind of gets pulled down with it as that crust is kind of diving down. So you start to deform the overriding continental crust, this overriding plate. And at some point, it's kind of, friction has got this locked in place, a lot of energy stored up. But at some point, that energy is going to be released, and that overlying plate's going to snap back up. As that that plate snaps back up, Any water that's above it will get pushed up, slosh back down, radiate out in all directions. There's your tsunami. All right. Before I move on, let me give you the super secret code. Please make sure you get all of these numbers, and the code is 916. 916. You got me? 916. So, an unfortunate example of such a thing, I alluded to it a little bit in the first video, will be the 2004 Indonesian tsunami. Also known as the Christmas Day earthquake, Christmas Day tsunami. This happened on December 25th in 2004. One of the world's largest earthquakes was ever recorded, right? 9.1. There's only been 5 earthquakes on the Richter scale recorded at a 9 or above, and this was one of those. It was a mega thrust event. It did create the most lethal tsunami in recorded history. And the reason for that, remember, it killed over 230,000 people. So Indonesia, sitting in the Indian Ocean, there's no tsunami warning system in place in the Indian Ocean at the time. Few people knew what tsunami meant prior to the event. Indonesia does have a lot of earthquakes. Tsunamis are just a little bit more rare. They didn't have a system in place to warn them. They didn't have strong infrastructure in place because it's not a wealthy nation. Few people were educated about this stuff. So there was a lack of education was a major reason for so many deaths. Again, this tsunami, though, radiated, rippled throughout the whole Indian Ocean. So it reached India. It reached other parts of Asia. It reached all the way over to Africa. There's no warning system in place. All of a sudden, you're standing there, tsunami. So in Indonesia, the reason for, again, so much death is the lack of education, is the lack of understanding and preparing for tsunamis. Many residents didn't know how to recognize a tsunami, but it's also a tourist area. Tourists, first-generation residents there, if you're from Arizona and you're going to Indonesia on a vacation, you might not know what a tsunami is. So they didn't recognize the signs that a tsunami might occur. So many went to the beach to watch. One telltale sign, and I'll talk more about this a little later, one telltale sign a tsunami is coming is if you're standing on the beach and then all of a sudden the ocean just goes away. The ocean just kind of gets pulled out. Pretty quickly. So that's the tsunami building up, kind of pulling back before it rushes onto land. So if you're ever at a beach and you see the water just pull back suddenly away, get out of there. Get out of there. So many people went down to the beach. Oh, look at this. It exposed, ocean floor. They went out there. They're collecting seashells and stuff. Oh, check this out. Many people went down there to watch. Many people died. So, again, the earthquake occurred right off the coast of Indonesia. The tsunami, again, ripped through the Indian Ocean. The lion's share of deaths happened in Indonesia, over 167,000. But Thailand, Myanmar, Bangladesh, India, Sri Lanka, and then even all the way into the Middle East, Yemen, and then over into Africa, Somalia, Kenya, Tanzania. Again, and it only took maybe over 7 hours to get to Africa. Again, if there's no warning system in place, if you don't know what to look for, you may even hear on the news, oh my gosh, giant earthquake and tsunami ripped through Indonesia. But if you're sitting in Africa and you hear the news, okay, there's no warning system. How do you know it's coming? You don't. All of a sudden, boom, it's on you. So a little bit before and after, some shots of Indonesia, some just kind of a random location on Indonesia, kind of before and after. Just complete, total devastation. I mean, look, just watching it roll in. Just watching it roll in. Lack of education, unfortunately. Just lack of understanding. So many deaths. It's unfortunate. So this is a little video to show you that shows the progression of the tsunami, some home video footage of people videotaping it as it's kind of rolling in. So footage like this, as well as for the assignment that you'll have for this unit. Some of it can be kind of tough to watch because people are there 1 second and then they're gone the next second. And people caught in a tsunami, you're not making it out. You're gonna drown. You're gonna get beaten with whatever material is in that. You know, these tsunamis, as they move inland, pick up debris, trees, cars, houses, and if that hits you, I mean, you know, the stuff is going 30 miles an hour, rushing in on land. Again, if that hits you, you know, a wall of water, it's going to crush you. It's going to kill you, let alone drown you. So some of the footage, whether it's this video or when we look at the assignment, can be a little tough. So just kind of grit through it, but it's the realities of the world in which we live in and dealing with the hazards and the disasters that come with it. All right. So we're going to pause there. When we come back, we'll talk about the impacts on society from tsunamis, which mostly aren't good. But that's what this class is all about, learning these things. So when we come back, we'll talk about that. See you back here in just a minute.